Within any given worksheet, there are some tips and techniques for moving around the worksheet, perhaps faster than simply scrolling or using arrow keys. One tip that I think is valuable in any worksheet at almost any time, particularly when it's relatively new to you, is to get some idea of how big is this worksheet. Get in the habit of pressing Control-End, not the letter N, but the END key. Now, I just pressed Control-End, and the active cell has moved into what we might call the lower right-hand corner of the active part of the worksheet. And there might or might not be any data in there. Doesn't mean anything is wrong if it's empty. What does this mean? I just pressed Control-End. I can say flat out and with total assurance that there is no information in this worksheet anywhere below this row. This is row 742. There's no information anywhere to the right of this column. You can be sure. If we scroll leftward, is there data in this row? Probably. Not necessarily, but probably. Is there data in this column? Probably. We could scroll up. Looks like there isn't. So what happens here? Press Control-End again. Main idea, though, is you've already determined the scope of the worksheet, and maybe you don't have to worry too much more about it. But Excel does track your usage of a worksheet. If at some point there were more names in the list, or maybe just one day you happen to write a formula down here or put in some data or whatever, used it for a second or two, got rid of it. Okay, fine. You forget about it, you go about your work, you do this, you do that. What happens the next time you press Control-End? Looks like the active cell is now in row 746. There's no data out there. Well, who cares really? As long as we know there's no data below it or to the right, that's the main purpose of this. Now, if over time, if this list begins to shrink some more, or if you do a lot of copying and pasting and put data down here and move it back and forth and so on, if you're a little bit annoyed that Control-End is no longer active, what you'll have to do is take the unnecessary rows. You can just highlight the cells, do a right-click, delete the unnecessary rows, do the same thing with columns. But even then, nothing will change until you save the workbook. And then later, when you press Control-End, it will be accurate. Main idea is you want to know the scope of a given worksheet. That quickly gives you that scope by letting you know there's no data beyond a certain cell, neither below it nor to the right of it. You could say the opposite of Control-End is Control-Home. And nearly always, this puts the active cell in cell A1. The only exception to that is if you have frozen titles. But it's handy because many times within a worksheet, no matter what the size, we need to return to the upper left-hand corner, our starting point. Now, if we have a particular worksheet that has many columns, moving across the worksheet is probably something we either do with the scroll bar, maybe we use arrow keys. You can also zip across the screen with Alt Page Down. Now, right now on the screen here, column H is the first column that's not completely visible. So as I press Alt Page Down, now column H becomes the leftmost column. If I do this again, you can see off to the right, column T is partially but not completely visible. I'll press Alt Page Down. You don't really care about those details that much, but Alt Page Up, Alt Page Down moves the screen rightward or leftward one full screen. And the wider the worksheet, the more valuable this particular feature happens to be. Now, within a given column or row, sometimes you want to move up and down a column somewhat quickly. If this is more or less contiguous data, how do we get to the bottom of the column kind of quickly? From the keyboard, it's Control Down arrow, or if toward the bottom here and we want to zip to the top, it's Control Up arrow. It works in all four directions. If you're using the mouse and you want to get to the bottom of this column, you've clicked right here. Double-click the bottom edge of this cell. Now stay away from the corner. Don't do that. Double-click the bottom edge. This moves the active cell downward until there's a break in the data. Same thing true on top here and here too. The same thing in all four directions. If we try this in a column where there are a lot of empty cells, for example in column I, this is not going to work so well here. If we have the active cell there, double-click, what happens? Jumps to there. Double-click. So it sort of leaps across these. Not so efficient. We wouldn't really be using it there. In general, Control Down arrow and double-clicking the edge work the same way. Occasionally it looks a little bit odd. For example, right here, double-click the right edge, it takes us there. Use Control Right arrow, it takes us there. Slightly different. But those are just quick tips for moving around a particular worksheet. And occasionally you do remember an address, or say in this worksheet that you've been working with a lot, maybe you were making some changes around row 500 yesterday, you haven't been sorting. How do we get there quickly? Simply press F5, type in an address, for example, A500, press enter, it will take us there immediately. So that's handy as well. The F5 key traditionally has meant go to, not only in Excel, but also in Word. So some quick ways to move around a given worksheet, the current worksheet.